welcome to our It's a Zoo in Here page layout class. In this class, we'll complete 2 pages themed to It's a Zoo with an unexpected twist of color. But first, do you know why they don't play poker at the zoo? You guessed it, too many cheetahs. All right, let's get started on our spread. So as always, we're going to start on the left side of the page. So go ahead and open up your page kit. You'll notice that there are some Quick Quotes Powder Puff inks listed if you would like to ink some of the pieces. This is always optional, but we do have that list there. And as we go along, I give you some substitutions in case you don't have those exact colors. So when I went to design this spread, I wanted to do some unexpected pop of color when it came to our die cuts and our pattern papers. So you probably have noticed what that pop of color is, but we're going to discuss that more as we start putting together this page into how I got that color and why it works with the spread when you see it all together. All right, so if you have your page kit open, we're obviously going to start with this green here as our background. If you notice, there are a lot of places for photos on this page, and I wanted to make sure there was a lot of room for photos because, you know, when we go to the zoo, it's kind of like one of those Disney days when you take 200 photos in one day, because just to capture that exact right moment with those animals. So I wanted to make sure that we had a lot of space here for our photos. But because of that, knowing there would be a lot of action and a lot of busyness with our photos, I wanted to go with a background sheet, and actually here with several sheets that were pretty monochromatic. So there isn't a lot going on in our pattern papers. That way we can feel free to have as many people or photos on this page and they'll remain the focus, as the background just is kind of one of those pretty murals in the back and showcases the photos. So if you haven't done so, go ahead and cut off the barcode strip for that green. You'll notice that this green is actually not from a zoo collection. It's from Echo Park's birthday collection. Some of the papers in that collection do have animals, but I thought that this was just the perfect shade of green for our leaf pattern paper here. All right, so after the green is done next, obviously we have that yellow. So in your packet, go ahead and grab one of the 12 by 12 sheets of the yellow pattern paper. I love that. It's almost like a monochromatic rainbow. So you think of rainbows with a lot of colors, but they've done it tone on tone, and it really reminds me of like the safari or Lion King, something like that, when I see this pattern. And this is from the baby collection from Echo Park. So Echo Park came out with a jungle themed baby collection. There's one for boys, there's one for girls, and then there's one that's gender neutral. They're all so adorable. And you'll notice that we've used a lot of that collection in most of our 2-page and our single page animal themed page kits. All right, so the yellow here, we do need to cut it down because we want to see a little bit of that green all the way around. So we're going to cut it down to 11 by 11. So 11 by 11. And then when we go to adhere that piece, we're just going to eyeball it. So get my runner out here. And we just want to adhere this in the center of our page. I'm going to do just a crisscross down the middle. This is also one of those too, because we have so many layers on our background, that if you wanted to cut out the center of this piece, That way you could save that piece of paper and use it to make yet more pages that would coordinate with this, with your zoo pictures. And that way it makes it a little less bulky as well. That's just personal preference if you like to take the time to do that. And then again with this one, you could do the same thing, because you'll notice we're going to put yet another piece of pattern paper on top. So you could cut out the center from the green, you could cut out the center from the yellow, and we're going to put another piece of paper that would cover all of that gap there in the middle. So that next piece is what we're going to do. So in your packet, you have that sunburst pattern paper, again from that baby collection. We're going to cut it down to 10.5 by 10.5. So 10.5. And save that strip, because that's a pretty good strip, especially if you're cutting out the center of each of these papers. And if you save this strip, you could easily add a piece of cardstock and then get another page that would coordinate with this spread. So 10.5 by 10.5. And then we're going to adhere that in the center of our yellow. All right, you know me, I love to layer paper. I love to layer my backgrounds. I think because the most favorite thing for me to do is to pick out pattern papers. And I don't want to narrow it down because they're all so pretty. So I just find creative ways to make them all work. Because if you notice on this one, we have 6 different pattern papers on this page. But when you look at it, it doesn't look like really busy like this background here. It looks, you know, we have a very clear focus for our photos. And even though we've used 6 pattern papers, it's how we use them that really works and makes the photo still be the star of the show. And one of those ways is the fact that I used a white, kind of a white pattern paper here. And that's the base that really all of our die cuts will be on. So that brightness of the white helps put your eye's focus into our photos. This serves as a great frame, and then that white helps draw that eye back in. All right, so after we have all of the 3 background pieces together, the next we have this strip of brown. And I wanted this strip of brown, and that's going to serve as the anchor for our title here. So go ahead and pull out the brown. You do have 2 strips of brown, so make sure we're pulling out the correct one. We have one that's thicker than the other. So we had 2 pieces in our kit. We want to make sure we use the thinner one for this. And we do need to cut it down, because if you notice, it just goes from the edge of the white to the edge of the white. So we need to cut it down to the same length as our white. So we're going to cut that down to 10.5 inches. And then we're going to adhere that then to our page. When you go to adhere this piece, I wanted to see a row of the sun. So I left that row of sun showing, so it depends on how you adhered it and how you glued it. You might just have a portion of the sun, that's okay. So let me flip this a little bit. So your page might look like that. So you can flip it because it's a square and it would still work, or yours is just going to be just a tad lower and will look like that. Either way is going to work, but if you haven't glued it yet, make it so that you have a row of suns here at the top of our page, and we're going to go right below that row of suns. And then see how that almost looks like a border sticker? The way that we have it kind of cut out, framed here, that really makes that look more like a sticker or a row of die cuts there. All right, so we have 2 more pattern paper pieces, and then we're going to get to the fun stuff. So next in your bag here, we have that. We pull these out. We have the leaf paper. So if you want to pull the 2 pieces out, you will see that the designer here for this pattern paper has put all of these shades of green for all of the leaves. And then every once in a while they do this pop of yellow and this pop of pink. And that pink is like a really unexpected thing when it comes to doing zoo or jungle themed pages, because you don't necessarily think of pink. I am a girly girl, but I was never one who really liked pink. I've tried to embrace it, and I think I've gotten better at using it in design, but pink was always a hard one for me. But on this, when it combined with the shades that I love, the greens and the browns, that pink really worked so well. So it was this exact pattern paper that really inspired that pop of pink that we used here in our die cuts. So just that little teeny piece of paper. They are both the same size, so it doesn't matter which one you grab. So grab one of those leaf pattern papers. We're first going to cut it down to 11 1/4. So 11 1/4. And then you will notice at one edge, we did do that little triangle banner cut here. So it's a little hard to see because it is green on green. But if you notice there, we did cut out that little divot. You're welcome to use it just with the flat edge, so leave it just as it is, or you can go ahead and cut out that little divot. I always like that little visual interest, just something that's like a little out of the norm from the straight, so it kind of makes you, without even really realizing it, it adds to the graphic dynamic of the page with just a little thing as that little triangular cutout. Okay, so when we go to adhere this, we want it to align on the right edge of our brown, and it's about 1/2 inch from the bottom of the brown. So I am just going to eyeball it about 1/2 inch lined up with the right edge, and we're going to go all the way across there. And look what a difference it makes with just that strip of paper. It is a pretty bold pattern, so I wanted to use it sparingly, but it was key to this design so that we could bring in that pink pop. So we're just barely going to see the pink, but it's just enough that it really helps allow us to bring in that extra color. All right, so also in your paper pack, you have 2 really thin strips of that brown striped paper. They're only 1/4 inch, so they're super thin. And we are going to cut this down just a little bit. We're going to cut that down to the 11 1/4 like we did the first. That little leaf strip here. And then I'm going to leave it just as is, and we're going to put it in the center of this strip. So it's going to nest right in that divot cut there, and it's going to go all the way across, again aligned there on the right edge of the page here. Since this strip is so thin, I'm going to use my wet adhesive. My runner is just a little bit thicker than the width of this strip, so it's going to be easier for me to use the liquid adhesive. All right, again, we're going to align it on the right and put it right down the center. Now you'll notice it's a little difficult to see, and you're probably wondering, like, why would we add that thin strip? Because we can see that it's there, but it almost appears to be a part of that pattern paper strip. The reason I did it is, if you noticed, our title rests on that line. So it will become more emphasized because we're going to rest our title exactly on that line. So when you look at the final one, it's a little easier to see that line because it's like it's underlined our title. So it's a little hard to see now, but there's always a method to the madness. And we're going to use that line to nest our title right on top of. All right, so now the fun part, we get to put together all of the die cuts. So I'm going to put this piece aside, and we're going to start working on all these die cuts. So go ahead and pull out the baggie for this page. There are so many little pieces in this baggie, so just be super careful when you're pulling them out, because it's going to be easy to lose some of those pieces. So we have our gold little fern leaf there, and it's just a single layer, so I'm going to put it to the side. Next we have this double layer yellow, and I'm going to go ahead and put those two pieces together. And the yellow is also one that all of this works. You know, yellow and green really do work together, but this, again, that strip of paper really helps with that pop of yellow in the leaves. We also have that little pop of yellow in our striped paper here. And that kind of allowed us to bring in the yellow shades as well. But again, yellow and green are typically ones that you think of that kind of go together. You don't necessarily think of using pink when you're doing a zoo-themed page. But sometimes I love to do the unexpected. All right, so those are just 2 layers, no inking on those. You're welcome to ink if you want to. So just the 2 layers to that leaf. All right, you'll also notice we wanted to kind of emphasize this little monkey here, and to do that we have that green leaf, and it's just a single layer. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out and set that aside. All right, let's work on our little monkeys here. So our one that's in motion, let's see, there are 3 layers that make the body, and then we should have a pink layer for the face and a gray layer for the face. So again, I'm just kind of pulling these out as I'm using them so I can keep them straight. All right, this lighter brown layer serves as the top. So I am going to take my Mocha Mama, so any kind of dark brown's gonna work. We always want it to be darker than our paper so that we see it, because remember it will dry lighter. And then I'm just going to take it straight from the ink pad and use that little divot to kind of go around the bottom. And then I'm just going to do just a little swoop here on his back. So here, I'll get that done and I'll show it to you. So for him, if you can see, I just went around the little bum area and then along that back edge there. No need to do the face. We're going to cover that up with the pink and with the gray. All right, so we have our darker brown layer. So we're going to adhere the darker brown layer to the black. So the black is the bottom. And then we have our darker brown layer for our monkey here. And then on top of that, we have that lighter brown layer. I'm being very sparing with our glue there. That's a pretty tiny, intricate piece. So we don't want that glue to ooze out. Just a tiny bit will do ya. All right, so the next layer is our pink. And again, I'm not going to ink that because we're going to add one more layer on top so you wouldn't even notice the inking. We're going to save that effort there. You'll notice that the eyes align, so you should be able to tell where that pink piece goes because the ears will align and the eyes will align. All right. And our final piece for our monkey here is that gray that's going to go around his little face. All right, there's our monkey. Isn't he just the cutest thing ever? I never can remember the angle of which you see it, so I never know if that's the right way or that's the right way. You'd think after 2 years I'd remember and I'd learn. I think that's it. But isn't he adorable? So cute. All right, so we're going to set him aside, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull out the second monkey. So our monkey, this monkey has a black, a white, and 2 browns, and then it has 2 for the face. So it has a little white for the face, and then somewhere in here is the little piece for the mouth. There's 2 base layers for him. All right, I know he's in there. I see all of the letters in there. I'm gonna wait till the, oh, I see it, I see it. There we go. Pull out that little portion around his mouth there. Okay, this guy's a little more confusing. So we have 2 black layers, if you can see here. So one of the black layers is a little thicker than the other. So this is our very bottom base layer. And then from that, we are going to add the white and then another black. Makes sense? So it's going to go the thick black, our white layer. So our white is going to go here in the middle of our shadow. So it's the thicker black than the white, and then the skinnier black. So a little confusing there because a lot of little pieces that make up him. And then the black. So when you put this down, let me get it centered on. Maybe. All right, there we go. So when you get that second black piece, all you're really gonna see is his white tummy. So just the white tummy is what you're gonna see from that white layer. All right, and then we want the darker brown layer. So after the second black, we have the brown. I also like this many layers because it makes it look pop dotted at the end. It's going to look like you use a pop dot, and we won't need to because it'll be kind of its own pop dot. So the same we did with that first one. I'm going to go ahead and ink our monkey, that top layer. So the same. I'm just going to go just along his back here. So just along his back with that Mocha Mama or any kind of dark brown really is going to work here. So if you can see that, just around his back there with that ink. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue that piece down. Look how intricate those little ears are. Such a tiny, tiny little intricate cut for that top brown layer. All right, so 2 more pieces for him. A lot of little pieces for the little monkey, right? So next we have the white face, and no inking here because we're not gonna see a lot of it. We're only gonna see the portion around the eyes when all is said and done. And then we have that little tiny little intricate mouth. think of the die cutters when they were cutting this, and we completely sold out, and they are in the process of remaking it again and again and again. I love it. All right, so these 3 flowers down here are all single layer, so I'm going to go ahead and pull those out. Nothing we need to do with them. They're all singles. I'm going to push those up just a little there. This 2-layer leaf here. So we do need to put those 2 pieces together, and then we're going to do a little inking. Again, just kind of being sparing with that glue. It doesn't need a lot to get that to hold together. Then once you have those 2 layers together, I am going to go ahead and ink this one. So I used my palm tree, and I am just going to go just along the right edge there, because if you had a shadow, it wouldn't shadow both sides, right? The sun wouldn't shadow both sides. It would only shadow one side. So since we are kind of going with that shadow effect, I just went ahead and inked just the one, just along that right side there. All right, so the last thing we have to do is the title, and then we can put this page together. Now this title has a lot of pieces, so bring on your patience. This one could take a little bit of time. So let's pull out the pink base. Again, I'm leaving all of that in there as I go. I know I will lose it, and the rug in this room looks about like the backdrop. So it's like a multicolored rug with pinks and teals and yellows. And when we drop a tiny little piece, it's about impossible to find. So I'm gonna leave what I'm not currently using in the bag so that I can keep it all together. All right, so we have our pink, our wild and crazy pink, as our base layer, and then we have the black layer that's going to give you the pattern to where all of those letters go. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere the black to our pink layer. And then that will kind of let us know where the rest of the pieces are going to go. So the next thing I'm going to do is the word wild. So the word wild itself, I'm just going to pull out the pieces for wild. So we have that ginger color for the base. And then I'm going to pull out those top black letters. And I'm going to leave the rest of that in that baggie. Static Cling does kind of grab it, so be careful of that as you're pulling it out. All right, so I'm going to adhere all of our black layers on top of our rust colored, our ginger cardstock there. That smooth paper, that this ginger color here, that is also My Colors cardstock. We only use My Colors. So they do have 5 different textures to their papers. So here we are using the smooth. So they do have what's called the Classic Collection. So the Classic Collection doesn't have any texture. It's their typical 80-pound weight, and it's just that smooth texture on top. But they also have the canvas, the glimmer, which is one of my favorites, and they have the embossed dot. And then they have a heavyweight. We don't use the heavyweight very often in our pages. On occasion, you'll see that we use the heavyweight for the 12 by 12 pages, but we use the heavyweight when it comes to the mini albums or the ornaments that we did, something that would be standing alone and not necessarily in an album, to kind of give it that extra that extra thickness, that extra toughness, the extra durability for something that's not going into a page protector. All right, so we should have our title, Wild. And then because of the shadow we have created, you'll know exactly where that word goes. So we're going to add the word wild. Isn't that fun? I love how it's black, the ginger, and then the black again. I really love how it, really emphasizes and highlights the word wild. Depending on when you watch this, we are going to do a series of 3 instructional videos on how to do things just like this. So this is the title that I have created. And we're going to do a set of videos. It will take 3 to fully go in depth on how to use fonts and titles. But we're going to learn stuff like this. So depending on when you're watching this, they might already be done. If you're watching this live, know that that's to come. All right. So now we have the word things. So I'm going to go ahead and add the word things. Again, using my liquid adhesive here, being pretty sparing. It's going to go into a page protector. Don't worry about every single little piece having adhesive. If you're running it through a Xyron, that's perfectly fine. But if you are doing it like I am, where you just dab the glue on, no need to make sure every little piece has it. All right. So the last thing we have is all those little tiny letters. My husband always told me, and you've probably heard me say, when you have something hard to do, you should do it first. So he always says, swallow the frog. If you have several different things, tasks that need to be done, swallow the frog. Do the hardest first. And I'm defying that today because we're leaving the hardest to last. All right. So what I am going to do, what's easier for me, I'm just going to use my color printout of what this page looks like, and I'm going to use that to make a little puddle of glue. Now it dries fast and you can't put it back in the bottle, so start little. You can always add. So I'm going to pull these out letter by letter. I am going to gently run it through the glue, brush off the extra, and put it right into my die cut. To me, that is way easier than running it through a Xyron, than adhering, putting adhesive on every single letter individually. I take my letter, dab it in that little puddle, take off the extra, stick it right where it goes. With the E, you do have 2 E's. Well, you have multiple E's, because where the also have E's. So obviously it's the bigger E down here. And then we have our A. Our A is a little kind of a different A, because if you notice it has that long stem. So it might be upside down, it might look like a P or a D or whatever. So, but it is the A. Again, I'm gonna drop it in there, brush off the extra, and adhere it right down. See how much easier that is? And because I brush off the excess, you don't see anything kind of oozing around that letter either, because I use this surface as the dabber and then brush it off so that there's, not a whole bunch that's gonna ooze out of the sides. All right, so I'm just gonna continue here. Because of our shadow, we should know exactly where each letter goes, so we don't necessarily have to go in order. I'm going to go in the order that I picked them out of the bag, because again, I'm going to leave everything in that bag so that I know where everything is. So we have our H. And just a few letters to go here. All right. You know, too, as we are wrapping up this title here, you wouldn't necessarily have to use this for the zoo, though it's perfect, right? So you can use it for the zoo, for kind of a wildlife park, for Disney. You could put little Mickey hats on each monkey. Put a little Mickey hat here, little Mickey ears here to each of these animals. All of a sudden, it works for the animal kingdom. You could also use it, maybe there was a zoo-themed birthday party you went to, or maybe it's just your children or your grandchildren acting crazy, you know? I have 3 boys. There were moments that it was a zoo in my house. Wild, wild children when they were wrestling. But I wouldn't change a minute of it. So you could use it for that too. Maybe your house is a jungle. Maybe your kids just have everything in disarray and they're wrestling around, they're being loud, they're being wild children. You could use it for that as well. It doesn't have to be just for the zoo. All right, 2 more letters. And we'll be done with our title. And look at that. Every single piece in that little baggie. Pretty incredible, isn't it? I should have done a count on how many pieces were on just this page alone, because it's pretty mind-boggling how many pieces go into this one single kit. All right, so we have all of our die cuts done, so now we get to go to the fun part and put it all together. I'm going to go ahead and cut my photo mats. So I'm going to pull out a piece of that brown paper. All right, we just need one for now. And I'm going to go ahead and cut all of these photo mats just like this. We do have those measurements listed there in your instructions if you want them identical. Obviously, it depends on your photos. All right. Then we have 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. All of these here just have that 1/4 inch mat. So if the photo is 3 1/2 by 5, the mat is 3 3/4 by 5 1/4. So all of these just have that 1/4 inch mat. I did that so that, well, that's normally what I do, but that way too you can get more photos on the page because we just have the single mat versus the double. All right, I think I just have one more to go. All right, so I still have this left over. We're gonna save that piece in case we need it for the next page. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do my photo mats with our leaves here. If you don't have your photos quite yet, you can just pause on this step because you'll want to tuck in your leaves depending on where you put your photos. So if you don't have your photos yet or you don't think it's going to be identical, just hang tight here while we glue this portion down. Because I wouldn't even put the leaves at the bottom portion of this because you're going to want to, again, tuck your leaves in so that they nestle in appropriately around your photos. So just hang tight while we adhere the 5 mats here. Uh-oh. we have a tape runner malfunction. There we go. Let's see if we can get this to run it again. You know, I'm gonna sound like my grandma. They just don't make them like they used to, right? It seems like my tape gets all messed up easier than it used to. It couldn't be the fact that I am 50 years old and I'm less patient, and you know, the arthritis is more in my hands than it used to be. It can't be that. It has to be the adhesive. It's kind of a running joke in this office. There are 10 or 11 of us now that work full-time in the office, and they are constantly bringing in donuts and chocolate, all of this just amazing sweet stuff. So it's kind of become the joke that, you know, the next person who brings that stuff into the office is going to get fired because I keep gaining weight. And it's not the fact that I have zero ability to resist the sweets, it's that the sweets are here. Obviously that's a joke. It's obviously totally my fault for not being able to resist. It's just kind of become a funny joke. All right, so from your perspective now, this probably looks like a bit of a big blob because all you see is the brown, but they are individual mats, and you can kind of see here better where all of those individual photos would go. And then I'm gonna tuck in these little leaves. All right, so I again wanted to bring this pink back down into the page as well, so it's not just on top. We want to add it down into the page. So I'm going to tuck that little leaf down there. If you notice, I only went down the spine. So I'm taking my adhesive and I'm just running down the spine of that leaf. Again, you're going to have a page protector on it, so there's no reason to use excess glue. It's gonna get covered up, and then it saves your glue. You don't have to use near as much. I'm gonna go again. See if you can see that there. I'm just going down the spine. So just going down the spine with that adhesive. Tuck that in there. Just like so. And again, you're going to arrange those depending on where the placement of your photos is. So if you don't think you're going to make it identical, or you don't have your photos yet, I would wait. I would totally wait on all of that. And now we can finish out by putting out our title here. So the first thing, we have that gold leaf. So again, I'm going to go just down the spine of that. Glue is precious, and so is time. So why waste either of them? All right, I am just going to lay this in place. So now we're going back to that line. And we know where the title goes because it's going to go exactly on that line. So for now, I'm just going to lay it there because that'll tell me where this leaf goes and where this leaf goes. So first we have the green. Again, just going down the spine. That way I can pick that up and I know it's going to go right under that portion because it's going to be right underneath that monkey. And then we have our last leaf here. I'm going to hang on to that so that I remember where it goes because it's not glued down yet. All right. So once I get all of those leaves down, now I can adhere my title. It is bigger. I'm going to go ahead and use my runner. We know exactly where that's going to go because of our leaves and our line. All right, this little guy here is pretty thick already, so we're not going to add any pop dots because that would make him really thick. We're going to rest him like he is sitting on our title, hanging out there on our title. All right, this little guy though, I think I'm going to go ahead and add some micro mini dots. So let me set this aside so that you can see what I'm doing here. Oh, and I forgot my micro minis. Let's see if we can do it with our roller here. We're going to have to cut these pretty thin because he's pretty tiny. We're going to make do. All right, I'm just going to give him a little extra added dimension. I'm going to cut this little skinny one in half, I think. The micro minis is really the way to go on this. But that way we don't forget his tail. All right, and I think I'm going to go just a little bit into the legs and feet, cutting that really thin. Cutting some little teeny squares, making my own little micro mini dots here. So we can go a little bit further down in the legs so we can really pop him. I think I'm gonna have to cut it even thinner. All right, here we go. Look at that. Perfect. All right. I have one stuck to my finger. So now I'm going to pull these off. Now there are so many, I'm not going to pull them all off, especially when they're tiny like that. I'm just going to pull off these few big ones here. That is plenty. Just like your liquid adhesive or any other adhesive, it's going to go in a page protector. So I just peeled off those big two, just enough so that it will stay. And then he is like he is resting, getting ready to walk on the word our. There we go. So there is your finished title there. All right, we wrapped up page 1. I'm going to take a quick break and then we're going to put this aside and we're going to start page 2. All right, let's start page 2. But first, what do you get when two giraffes collide? A giraffic jam! All right, let's get this page started. So we're going to use the exact same background sheet that we did for our first page. So we have that extra sheet of green in here. So of course the first thing we're going to do is cut off that barcode strip. Don't forget to save the barcode strips if you really like the paper and think you might like to buy additional sheets. That comes in handy. All right, so next we have the same yellow. So you can barely tell here, but there are two different pieces. So again, if you want to cut a square out of the center here, we will cover up, we'll cover it up here and we'll cover it up here. So sorry, I misspoke. Don't cut it out of the center. If you want to, you can cut out a little piece up here and a little piece down here. So there is a part that we will see in the center, but there's going to be 3 layers of paper up here and 3 layers of paper down here if you want to avoid that thickness, or that way you have extra pieces if you want to create another page that would match all of this. All right, so we have that green as the base. The next thing we're gonna do is pull out that second sheet of our yellow sun. It's actually a rainbow with rays. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that yellow out. We're gonna cut it into 2 pieces. So let's cut a 6.5 piece. 6.5. And then we need a 4.5. So 6.5 and 4.5. And then don't forget, go ahead and save that little piece that's left over if you think you might create another page with all of this. All right, so we have a 6.5 piece and a 4.5 piece. Now we're going to cut each of these down. So right now they are 12 inches, so we need to snip off an inch so that each of them are 11 inches. So we're going to cut those down now to 11 inches. And then we need to do the same with the second one. We're going to cut that down, what did I say, to 11 inches. 11 inches. All right. So now we have those 2 pieces. We're going to adhere one flush to the top, one flush to the bottom. So they are centered horizontally, so you should see a little bit of green here and a little bit of green here. So when I was talking about you could cut out a little bit of the green here because we're going to cover that up, and that way you'd have an extra little piece that you could use later, or it could just help alleviate some of the bulk there. So we're going to adhere one flush to the bottom, one flush to the top, and then they're both going to be centered horizontally. So make sure your sun, your rainbows, whatever you want to call them, make sure they are facing the right direction though and not upside down. We're going to put the smaller one along the bottom. And then we have that 6.5 piece that we're going to add at the top. All right, just like so. I am a person who tends to stand up when I scrap. It's a little bit harder to see the angle when we're sitting down. All right, so after you get those 2 pieces down, we do have 2 more pieces that's gonna make up this base. So if you notice here, we have this yellow and white, and then we also have a brown layer here. That darkness of the brown really helps emphasize this title, where the white portion in this yellow pattern paper here helps highlight and bring your eye into the photos. So if you remember on the first page, we used this white piece here because it again will help draw your eye in here once your photos are on the mat. The darker kind of emphasizes the title there. So that was kind of the choice in those 2 patterns. So next we have this yellow, it almost looks like corn, doesn't it? Like little kernels of corn all the way across. So it'd be great if you're doing like a farmer's market kind of page. It would work well with that too. I love how the same exact paper could be used on so many different things. So again, just as soon as I saw that, it reminded me of corn. All right, so you do have that yellow and white paper in your stash. I'm going to pull that out, and we do need to cut it down. So it's already cut to the correct width, but we need it to be 10.5 inches. So we're going to cut this down to 10.5 inches. 10.5 inches. And then we are going to adhere that flush to the top of our page here. Flush to the top and centered in that first yellow, like so. And just pause there for a minute. So see the difference that it makes, even though the base of that yellow is almost identical to what we put it on top of, but the fact that it has the rows of white, how it then really emphasizes and draw your eye into that top section just by adding that little piece there, and that will help draw your eye back into the photos. All right, and we want that darker section here to be the base for our all of our titles and our die cuts here. So in your packet you have that brown. We have this brown piece here. So we do need to cut it because right now it is the correct width, but we need to cut it down to the correct length. So we're going to cut that down as well to 10.5 inches. 10.5. And then we're going to adhere it flush to the bottom. So flush to the bottom of our page, so that you have that border of yellow showing all the way around. So look again what a difference it makes when we keep adding all of these layers of pattern paper. See how this really makes a dramatic statement once we get that dark brown added. And again, that's going to serve as the base there for all of our titles and our die cuts. All right, so now that we have this, we have just a couple more pattern papers that you'll see here at the base that we're going to add. So it's the same two pieces that we added for our title on our left side. So I'm mimicking what we did here, and I'm doing it again down here to really provide that continuity. So you'll see that you'll have these same two pieces like we did here, and we're kind of using them in the same way, where the line really serves as kind of a base for our title. All right, so let's go ahead and pull out that leaf paper. So you have the leaf paper here. I'm not going to banner cut this one. We do need to cut it down just a little bit. It needs to be 11.5 inches. So we're only going to snip just about a 1/2 inch off of the edge, off of the end there. But we want that to be about 11.5. Doesn't have to be exact. We just want it not to go clear across the page. We're going to adhere it pretty close to the bottom. We want to be able to see just a little bit of brown underneath, like so. And again, that helps bring in that pop of pink that we use and really helps tie in the yellow. All right, and then we have that final striped piece of paper. I'm going to leave it just as it is. I'm going to leave it all the way at 12 inches. It's pretty thin. I'm going to get out my liquid adhesive. Do you kind of see that there's monkeys on the back of it? It's an adorable monkey piece of paper on the flip side. I've used it on one of the boy months before. It's so adorable. All right, this time we're not going center. It's a little bit lower than center. Clear across the page, and again, just a little bit lower than center. And see, as we continue to add all of these layers to our background, just what a difference this makes. The paper is really what helps this look professional. Pattern paper choices are so important. And it's what takes, these are beautiful, don't get me wrong. We do a stellar job with the die cuts, but it's really the placement of all of that paper that really elevates this to an all new level. Because we could put all of these die cuts just on our green back. That's pretty, right? Absolutely. But look, by adding these pieces of paper, how much it elevates the design by adding these various pieces. I love to play with pattern paper. All right, let's see. So for the next thing here, I'm going to go ahead and cut my photo mats. So I'm going to pull out that piece of brown cardstock. I do have a little left over from the other side, so maybe I can get a few from that. I think I might be able to get the 4. Yep. So I'm going to do the 4 1/4 by 6 1/4, and I'm getting that from the remainder of our brown that we used to make our mats for the first page there. 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. And then I'll be able to get the 5 1/4 by 3 3/4, all left over from that first piece. So I have this big piece here, and if you're doing it identical, all we have left is the 3 by 3 and the 3 by 4 photos. So we're gonna go 3 1/4. And I think we're done with that. So by 3 1/4 and then 4 1/4. All right, perfect. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and put my photo mats down. If you don't have your photos yet, you can leave that blank, but you could actually go ahead and do everything else. So if you remember on this side, if you don't have all your photos ready and you weren't doing your mats identical, we held out on these because we really want those to be able to tuck into and around our photos. But with this, I think you're pretty safe that you would be able to go ahead and put all of the die cuts down even without knowing the exact photos you're going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and just add these photo mats. I do like to overlap my photo mats. I just think it adds a nice continuity. And again, it kind of goes back to that, just takes it up just another level to say, hey, all of this is really meant to go together. Does not offend me at all if your preference is that all of the photo mats have that little bit of gap. This is your page. I always say, no one's gonna see the original beside yours. So have fun and do whatever works for you. All right. Add that one there, just 2 more photos. And then we get to go to our die cuts. All right, just 1 more here. You'll also, if you'll notice, when I am placing my adhesive, see if I can get my tweezers here so you can look. I always leave these little flaps with no adhesive. So where those photo mats overlap each other, you'll notice I don't put any adhesive at all, so that when I come in later, I still am able to get underneath there to put that photo. So be really careful with your adhesive. You can see if I pull that up there. I am pretty cautious about not overlapping. Because again, that way you can add photos later, and you'll be able to slip all of those underneath each other. All right. Actually, I think I'm going to move this one over just a hair. That way you can make sure that there's plenty of room to see what's going on in that photo. Alrighty. Okay, so that's exactly, if you're doing it exactly like the sample, this is what it would look like at this stage. And then I'm going to set this aside so that we can work on the fun part. So now we have our die cuts. So get out your little baggie here. Again, there are so many pieces in this baggie. This is one of the kits that probably has one of the most pieces that we have ever done in a kit. Just ask the staff. I love it though. I really, you know how some of those that you get the page done and you're like, oh, that's good. And then you get some of those that are like, oh my gosh, that is so cute. This is kind of one of those. And I just kept adding the leaves and adding and adding. And you'll notice in these baggies, there are just so many pieces. But the staff is just so amazing to get all of this all together and make it all get to you in one piece. All right, so I just am going to work on the giraffe first. All of these various vines and leaves, they're all single layer, so nothing needs to be done to those. So I'm just going to set those aside for now, and I'm going to work on my giraffe. He is a little challenging because he has some kind of oddly shaped pieces. All right. So the first thing we have here, the wine color is our base. So that wine colored is the base. And you're only going to see just little pieces here of that red portion. You're primarily going to see this ginger color here. And I did want to go ahead and ink those edges. Let me double check. I know what my gut would say, but let me make sure that I'm saying exactly. Yeah, with oak tree. That was what my gut was saying. I just wanted to make sure that's what I had written as well. So when you look at oak tree, it is actually a little reddish and not necessarily very orangish. It tends to go more to the reds. But with something as dark orange as this, none of the orange powder puff inks really work. You might be able to see like fall leaves as a color. You might be able to see it when it first goes on, but by the time it dries, you can hardly see that it's there. So since there's not like a really deep dark orange in the quick quotes, we kind of have to go outside of that color palette. So there's two ways you can go. You can go a brownish color, which would work very well. If you don't have oak tree, you can go ahead and use the brown. I think that would be your best bet. The Mocha Mama would even work. Since we are using this wine colored in the base, I went with it's kind of an orangey red color. It tends to go more to the red, but it really, I think, highlights these edges the best. And I'm just going to go pretty light. And I'm going to go all around his body. So his neck and his body. I'm not going to really go down into the legs. You can, but when all is said and done, you're going to cover up the legs. So I'm just going to do the neck and body. Don't forget to be gingerly with your touch. So be a little softer. You can always add more. Harder to take away. So if I pull this up here, you can see how I just went just along the body and just along the neck. And then we're going to go ahead and adhere that. So running my adhesive here. So I do have a funny giraffe story. If I haven't, I've probably told it a dozen times. So I'm sorry if you have to hear me say this again. But when my boys were little, we went to a drive-through safari in Arizona. And as part of that drive-through safari, they had double-decker Jeeps. So you could take the double-decker Jeep out to see the giraffes. Now you could be on the lower level, or you could go all the way up to the top level of the Jeep, in which you were almost eye to eye with the creatures. I had to go so that I was eye to eye with these creatures. I am very adventurous, and I've kind of taught my boys to be the same way. But anyway, so we're up on the double-decker, and if you're on the double-decker, the tour guide, would give you biscuits. So they looked kind of like a Nutter Butter, and she would give you these biscuits, and you could hand feed the giraffes, which is pretty cool, right? If you've probably done it at a zoo and they give you like lettuce or something like that, and you toss it out, and you see the giraffes come and get it from your hand, right? It's pretty cool because their tongues are quite large, right? So it's fun to see that come out to you. So while we're there on this Jeep tour, the tour guide jokingly asked, who's brave enough to take this last biscuit and put it in their mouth and have the giraffe take it from your mouth? Well, everybody laughs. It's kind of a joke. And, you know, she's like, seriously, is there anybody? And everybody was like, heck no. And there were probably 20 of us up top at the Jeep. Everybody's like, heck no, but me. So I put this biscuit in my mouth, and mind you, now everybody is taking photos. So I put this biscuit in my mouth, and I put my face out, and then you see this giraffe come by, and you see this tongue coming, and this huge tongue. It's almost like it came in slow motion, took the biscuit out, put his tongue in my mouth, and took it away. So, anybody else been French kissed by a giraffe? I love that. I love animal experiences. My dream one day is to go to Africa on a real safari. All right, so we have the gold pieces laid down here. Next is kind of where it gets like, where do these pieces go? Because we have some strange little thin brown pieces. So they go alongside of each leg. So I'll get one glued here and then I'll show you. So we have two thin brown pieces, and it goes right on the edge there of each leg. So we're gonna have two of them, but it goes just along that edge of his leg. And then we're gonna do it again to the other side. So you'll be able to see that curve forms with the body there. All right. So that your two legs should look like that now, with a brown piece on both sides. All right, and then we have the yellow portion of the leg. We have both legs have a yellow portion. Let me get the second one out of my bag here. All right, here's the tricky part. There we go. So they're gonna go, the shorter one is the left leg, the taller one is the right leg. So these aren't glued yet, but I just wanna hold it up so that you can see where they're gonna go. So that shorter piece on the left leg, the longer piece on the right, and that forms those legs. I love the color of this gold cardstock, but it is smooth, which makes it a little harder to know which side is up when you're adhering the die cuts. That's when this virtual instruction really comes in handy here. All right. So he also has a little gold portion of his tail. Some of you might have a smaller baggie full of stuff. So if you don't see the tail in the larger baggie, look to see if you have a smaller one. This one has so many tiny pieces. Some of the bags, we ended up putting them in smaller ones so that they were separate. We're gonna add the tail. All right, so you see the tail there? Just that little portion of the tail. We have two more pieces. And again, they're really hard to see here, but in your little baggie, you have these two little pieces of a really dark brown, and they are, I'll go ahead and put one down and then I'll show you where it goes. They finish out the hoof. So if you look here, we have that lighter brown that we adhered, and then down into the hoof, we're gonna add those little teeny pieces of dark brown. Now, when all is said and done, if you are putting your photos identical to mine, we actually end up covering up most of the hoof of the giraffe. So if you can't find these little brown pieces, or if you don't want to mess with these little brown pieces, that's perfectly fine. Depending on exactly how you place your giraffe, you might not see these little tiny pieces. But we wanted to put them there so that you did have the option of using them. All right, so there's the hoofs there of our giraffe. Now, you will notice that there is still one thing. So on our final sample here, if you look, he does have 2 eyes and he has 2 dots for his nose. We put little pieces in this baggie, but those eyes and nose, those little dots were just way too small. So that's where the thin-tipped black marker comes in. So you can use the ultra-fine, Sharpie marker works, any black marker that's thin-tipped. And we're just gonna draw some eyes on. Draw some eyes on. If you want it to be a girl, give it a little bit of an eyelash. And then we're going to draw 2 little circles for the nostril. So you don't have to be an artist. We're just going to draw some circles here. It's okay if they turn out to be ovals. But that's how we're going to get our giraffe's eyes and nostrils there. Isn't he so cute? All right, I'm done with him. So I'm going to go ahead and glue him on. So he's bigger. I'm going to use my dry adhesive. All right, so again, kind of depending on where you put your photos, I'm getting a mess here. Let's put this over to the side. And maybe if I put this over to the side, you'll still be able to see. All right. I'm going to go ahead and add my giraffe to the edge. Let's see how he fits. I'm going to put him just a little higher up so that he's peeking his head above that top of my photo. All right, just like so. So depending on how you place your giraffe, you may or may not have that tail, little portion of his tail sticking off. So if that little tail is sticking off, we're just gonna snip off the excess. So I'm just gonna turn that over. Give that a little snip, make sure it fits in our page protector. And use him like that. All right, I'm gonna set that back aside again, go back to our baggie. I'm going to go ahead and pull out everything else. All right, we have 2 leaves here. So both of these leaves, just like the first page, have 2 layers. So I'm going to glue those 2 layers together for each of those. I'm not going to ink this first one. It's totally up to you. You could use pumpkin pie. You could use the Sahara sand. Desert sun might work. It might not be dark enough, but if you wanted to give that a little accent, you're welcome to. I am, though, when I put these 2 together. So I'm going to adhere together the 2 layers of our leaf, and then I am going to give it just a little jot of ink there. I'm going to use the palm tree. All right, just like the first one, I'm gonna go on the right, and I'm gonna go pretty heavy. So I'm gonna go pretty heavy on this right side of the leaf. So if you notice, when I'm inking heavily, I tilt my ink pad. So instead of being straight up to get the edge, I am tilting it so that I can get a really heavy edge, so that it goes in a little farther into my die cut. You can see what that looks like there. All right. Now we have our title with our lion. So, remember, just like we did on our first page, we had our pink as our background. So we are going to tie that in here. If you look, if I put these 2 side by side, how we have a pop of pink here, here, and here 3 times. So in design, we always want to work in odds, and we have this unexpected pop of color in zoo. So obviously it's the pink. So we have it 3 times. We have this grouping of pink, this grouping of pink, and this grouping of pink here. So that's why we wanted to bring that pink back over to this side as well and create that visual triangle there. So the pink is the base of our It's a Zoo in here. It's pretty big. I'm going to go ahead and use my tape runner instead. To put those two pieces together. All right, and then I'm going to do my word zoo. And again, if you notice, I use the same color scheme. So how we had wild is kind of our main word over here when we use the ginger and the black. Same thing, we're using the ginger and the black. These two are pretty big, so I think I'm just going to flip them all over and use my tape runner. I just think sometimes if you use liquid adhesive on bigger pieces, sometimes it could make it too rigid and make it bow just a little bit. It's just being picky though. Liquid adhesive does work. It's just that perfectionist side of me. All right, and that way we can quickly add our zoo title. All right, and because our cream creates that perfect shadow, we can go ahead and adhere this down because we know exactly where it's going to go. And again, using my dry adhesive for this. All right, so now we have It's a Zoo. And now we're going to have our lion. All right, so the base of our lion is the thicker black. So if you remember on the one monkey, we did have the 2 layers of black. Same here, so make sure it's the thicker layer that is the base. And then on top of that, we're going to add the burgundy. So it's called wine. We're gonna add that red layer next. We're just gonna see just a little pop of it once the die cut is all complete. But that red there, that burgundy color is going to be the next layer. All right, and after that burgundy layer, we have the black. The reason why we have the black is because we want to be able to see underneath the eye and the ear and in the little part of the whiskers of his nose. So again, we're not going to see a lot of it either. All right. So next we have this, if you notice, there are 2 different colors. So this one is called goldenrod. So it is the deepest shade of yellow that we carry in the canvas. We are going to see just a little bit of it. And again, it's a pretty dark yellow layer. So I don't know that your desert sun or something like that is going to work. I'm going to use the Sahara sand. So I'm going to go just along his back, and I'm going pretty dark. So to go pretty dark, I'm going over the same place over and over and over and over to really give it that emphasis. So I'm going to show it to you what it looks like now. So if you see, it's really dark where I added the ink. Now don't forget it's going to dry a little lighter, so it's okay if it's pretty heavy now. We will get it a little bit lighter. All right, now we're going to adhere the gold. Alrighty, starting to come to life, isn't he? I love all the layers. I'm even going to go a little bit thicker with my layers, and these 2, I'm going to pop them off. So that's totally up to you, because he's already starting to get a little thick. So if you don't want any kind of dimension in your scrapbook page, just leave the next step, the pop dots, off. So that's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and add that little bit of dimension. All right, so we have 2 pieces of yellow left here. I'm going to use my pumpkin pie because I didn't want to go exactly tone on tone. If you think of a lion's mane, it's not one solid color. So I didn't want to go with the Sahara sand, or like the desert sun. That would work, but then you're going the yellow on the yellow, and in the wild, his hair is not one color. So that's why I kind of wanted to bring in the pumpkin pie, because not only does it really make a dramatic statement on those pieces, it also to me seemed a little true to life. But once I pop those off and you see that bright ink on the edges, it just makes a world of difference, I think. All right, I am going to use my micro mini dots. I did go get them. I think I might use a combination here. I did go get my Tim Holtz scissors as well. So to me, if you use the roll of foam, the 3D foam, Tim Holtz scissors is the way to go. You don't have to use the ones that are this large. He comes in 3 or 4 or 5 different sizes, several different sizes. I happen to like the big ones, but he definitely has smaller if it's easier for you to work with. But the joy is that they're Teflon, so you know how, especially like I keep using these and they get all gummed up from the adhesive. Your Tim Holtz scissors are Teflon, so it's made for that stuff not to stick, and you can cut pop dots easily. Way better to use than just your regular scissors. All right, I think I could use a couple more large pieces, and then I think I might need to go in though with my micro minis. Just because this is pretty thin over here, so instead of cutting that foam in such a tiny piece, it's just easier, I think, to use these micro minis. All right, I like it to lay flat, so I always tend to go just a tad overboard so that it lays perfectly flat and perfectly pop dotted off. All right, I think that'll do it. And as I always say, it's gonna go in a page protector. Don't be sticking there and taking 15 minutes on trying to pull all those little teeny things off. No need to. Time is precious. All right, and I'm gonna pull off the big ones here. All right, he is almost done. He's got one more piece, but I wanted to show you how fun that is. It's amazing that it's, it's just out of paper. When you add the pop dots, it really makes it look like a manufactured sticker, a manufactured product. All right, so in your little bag of tricks, if you have them all separated, you have the little piece for his nose, that's for his whiskers around his mouth there, and then you have the little piece for his nose. All right, now I'm gonna put that aside again. So we have the little red burgundy triangle that's gonna finish out his nose. Just like that. And then around where his whiskers would be, we have this little yellow piece. There you go. He is a cat, so obviously he would have whiskers. So how fun would it be to like take some twine that has like a wire through it so that it stood straight, or to use just wire itself, to use something that would make the little whiskers. That would be adorable. All right, and because of our exact shadow mat here, we're gonna know exactly where that lion goes. And we're going to add him to our title. Perfect. All right. We didn't swallow the frog yet, so now we get to do all of those little letters last again. My husband would be disappointed in me. All right, so I'm going to go back to making my little pool of adhesive. And again, we can always add more. You can't shove it back in the bottle. So we're going to start small. We can always add. This stuff dries super fast. All right, I'm going to pull out a couple letters here to get me going. These are so tiny. All right. These, unlike the last, I think we need to kind of go in order. It's a little bit harder to tell where they go. All right, so let's get my H, and that might help here. I got the H. So I'm dabbing it into the pool really lightly and kind of then getting off that extra so that it doesn't ooze. And that way it's gonna stay perfectly and quickly. All right. Let me get my E and my R. And then you'll notice that on each side here we have those long skinny pieces. Can you imagine cutting out literally over 1,000 of that size, that little teeny piece, having to cut them all and then put them in bags? You all think that this would be such a fun job to work at, and then I come up with stuff like this. And then you think, oh my gosh, what was she thinking? No, seriously, we have a lot of fun around here too. All right. So there is our here, and I'm gonna go ahead and add my last line, my right side here. All right, I think I'm safe to go ahead and pour out the last two pieces. And again, isn't it amazing? Think of how many little tiny itty bitty pieces were in this kit. And that, you know, there are how many hands that touch this design to get it all put together and get to you. It just, I'm telling you, I am so lucky to have the team that we have here at the Whole Kit and Kaboodle. It's just amazing what they accomplish and how, you know, the level of quality that they put into it. Every time I teach a class, I am just awe-inspired by the way that they put the kits together. All right, one last piece. All right, so we have all of the die cuts done. So now all we have to do is put these final pieces together and our spread will be complete. All right, I'm gonna move this down a little. I think we're done with the pop dots. We can move that to the side. I think we're done with our scissors. Get rid of some of this clutter here. All right, so I'm just gonna lay my zoo title here, and I'm going to use that as my guide to where all of these fun elements are gonna go. So I'm gonna start with my gold, and if you remember with the first page, I am just going to go down the spine. In this instance, I'm just gonna go with the lower half of the spine because you never know what's gonna touch the photo, and we want to be able to slip our photo underneath there, and that we leave all of that open So our photo, that way it gives us choices. Either our photo can slip underneath it or our photo can go on top of it, kind of depending on what the subject of our photo is. And again, just going down the stem here. And then we have one more green that's going to go on this side. And all along I'm using my title here. It's not glued down, but I'm using it as a guide as to where all of these pieces are going to go. All right, we have 3 more leaves we're going to add here, the palm frond. Let's try this. All right, there we go. We slip that green leaf. Then we have the pink version of it. This page here is also perfect if you're taking photos of your time spent with us with our It's a Zoo crop, whether it have been in Orlando or Fullerton or here with us virtually. Take photos of yourself having fun with friends or with yourself in the computer screen. Maybe you have on a fun shirt while watching us virtually. You could also use this for our crop-tacular photos. All right, there we go. We did it. Our It's a Zoo theme main spread here is all complete. Thanks so much for tuning in. We have way more zoo fun to come with a few more of our zoo page classes. We'll see you in a bit.